The small flower shop called Blooming Dreams in the Chicago suburbs was filled with seasonal flowers. On a spring afternoon, the owner, Megan Williams, was finishing a design sketch for a bouquet for a big wedding scheduled for the next weekend. At the back of the shop, her 6-year-old daughter Amy was coloring at a small table, occasionally looking up to check on her mother. "Mom, how's this flower color?" Amy asked, showing her drawing of a sunflower. Megan paused her work and smiled. "Perfect, Amy. You're even better with colors than Mommy is." She gently stroked her daughter's chestnut hair. Amy's blue eyes resembled those of her late father. Her ex-husband Brian, from whom she had been divorced for 3 years, now lived in Colorado with his new family and had minimal involvement, sending cards only on children's holidays. Megan ran her shop while raising her daughter. After studying botany in college, she had opened a small flower shop after getting married. Following the divorce, the shop became the sole source of income supporting her and her daughter. The shop phone rang, and when Megan picked up the receiver, she heard her mother Judith's voice. "Megan, how are the preparations for the Bryant family wedding this weekend?" Judith's voice always contained a slightly critical tone. "Going well, Mom. I'm just finishing the final designs now." "You always work right up to the deadline. Can't you be more organized?" Megan took a deep breath. "Don't worry. It will be finished on schedule." Judith was a former lawyer who owned a spacious house in an upscale Chicago neighborhood. She always demanded perfection and had high expectations for her 2 daughters. She was especially hard on Megan, criticizing her choices, particularly her career as a florist and her unstable marriage. "Anyway, about tomorrow," Judith continued. "Carol is busy with Michael's school conference. If you can't get away from your big order tomorrow, bring Amy over to my house." Megan checked the calendar in her shop to confirm tomorrow's schedule. Indeed, she had a delivery of large arrangements for a corporate client. Normally, she would ask the daycare for extended hours, but tomorrow the facility was closed for staff training. "Thanks, Mom. I'll take you up on that," Megan answered with slight hesitation. After ending the call, Megan looked toward Amy. Recently, she had noticed that when her daughter returned from her grandmother's house, she seemed less energetic and quieter than usual. "Amy, it looks like you'll be spending tomorrow at Grandma's house." The smile disappeared from Amy's face. "Will Michael be there?" "Probably. You'll be able to play with your cousin Michael, right?" Amy silently returned to her coloring. "Yes." Megan's sister Carol had a 10-year-old son named Michael. She had recently divorced and moved back into her wealthy mother's house. Unlike Megan, Carol had followed the path her mother expected: a prestigious university, a job at a famous company, and marriage to a man from a good family. However, her marriage had fallen apart due to her ex-husband's infidelity, and she had become emotionally unstable. Michael was beginning to be known as a troublemaker at school. He often directed the anger from his parents' divorce toward other children, especially his cousin Amy. As Megan prepared to close the shop, she thought about how Carol had always been jealous of Megan's daughter Amy. It seemed that Carol couldn't stand that Amy was growing up to be beautiful, had a kind personality, and was well regarded at school. "Let's go home when you're ready, Amy," Megan called to her daughter. "I'll make pasta tonight. With lots of cheese?" Amy asked, perking up a little. "Of course." Their apartment was a 10-minute walk from the flower shop. Though it was a small 2-bedroom place, Megan had created a warm atmosphere with colorful furniture and plants. From the apartment windows, they could see a small park where they often spent weekends together. After dinner, Megan gave Amy a bath and put her to bed. After her daughter fell asleep, she sat on the living room sofa, opened her laptop, and did a final check for tomorrow's delivery. Then, she found an email from her mother in her inbox. "Megan, bring Amy at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Carol should be back by 1 p.m. I'll be home until 3 p.m. I'll bake Amy's favorite cookies. The message ended with love, but to Megan, those words felt empty. Her mother's love always came with conditions. She wrote a reply, "Thanks, Mom. I'll be there at 10 a.m. Please take care of Amy." Megan closed the screen and looked up at the ceiling. People around her thought her family was wonderful. A wealthy, educated mother with social standing who was a former lawyer, a sister who was a successful career woman, and then there was Megan, the poor but trying hard, single mother. No one knew about the tensions and conflicts beneath the surface. She peeked into Amy's room. Her daughter was sleeping peacefully. Megan kissed Amy's forehead and prayed that tomorrow would go smoothly. The next morning, Megan's flower shop was bustling with preparations for delivery. Elaborate arrangements for a major law firm's opening ceremony were lined up, and she was busy with last-minute adjustments. "Amy, we'll be going to Grandma's house in 15 minutes, Megan called from the back of the shop. Amy nodded silently as she packed colored pencils and a coloring book into her small backpack. Her favorite purple dress had just been mended by her mother the previous week. "Mom, can't I stay at the shop?" "I'll help," Amy asked in a small voice. Megan stopped what she was doing and crouched down in front of her daughter. "I'm sorry, today is especially busy. I promise I'll pick you up as soon as I get back from the delivery." "I promise." Amy shrugged resignedly. "Okay, I understand." When they arrived at Judith's house, Michael's bicycle was already at the entrance. Megan frowned. Carol was supposed to be busy with a conference today. "Good morning, Megan," Judith opened the door, appearing with perfectly styled hair and an expensive cashmere sweater. "Amy, aren't you going to greet Grandma?" Amy said, "Good morning," in a small voice, standing behind Megan as if hiding. "Where's Carol?" "I thought she had a conference," Megan asked, peering into the entrance hall. "Oh, her morning one was cancelled. But she has meetings this afternoon, so I'll be watching both children," Judith added, as if sensing Megan's concern. "Don't worry. Carol doesn't think Amy is a nuisance." Megan felt uncomfortable with her choice of words, but she didn't have time. She kissed Amy and promised, "I'll pick you up by 5 p.m. Amy wouldn't let go of Megan's hand and looked up into her mother's eyes as if to confirm, "Really? Really? I promise." Megan kissed her again and stood up. "Be a good girl." In the afternoon, Megan finished the flower delivery earlier than scheduled and arrived at Judith's house at 4:30 p.m. She rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. Hearing children's voices from the backyard, she went around the side of the house toward the yard. In the yard, Michael was riding his bicycle alone. Carol was sunbathing on the outdoor terrace while looking at her smartphone. But Amy was nowhere to be seen. "Carol, where's Amy?" Megan called to her sister. Carol responded without looking up. "Inside, I guess. With Mom." Megan hurried into the house. Judith was in the living room, but Amy wasn't there. "Mom, where's Amy?" "She's resting in the upstairs guest room. She seemed a bit tired," Judith said calmly. Feeling anxious, Megan ran up the stairs. When she opened the guest room door, Amy was lying on the bed, facing the wall. "Amy, Mom's here to pick you up." When Amy turned around, Megan's heart nearly stopped. Blood was flowing from the right side of her daughter's forehead, her hair was matted with dried blood. Her face was wet with tears, and she was trembling. "Amy. What happened?" Megan rushed to her and embraced her. "I fell from the jungle gym," Amy said in a small voice between sobs. However, her eyes seemed to tell a different story. Megan picked Amy up and hurried downstairs. Judith and Carol were chatting and drinking coffee in the kitchen. "Why didn't you tell me? Amy is injured." Megan's voice trembled with anger and fear. Judith shrugged. It's nothing serious. Children fall all the time. Carol put a band-aid on it. A band-aid? She's bleeding from her head. Carol interjected, Michael gets hurt almost every week. Children heal quickly. Megan stared at them in disbelief. I'm calling right now. She took out her smartphone with one hand and called her mother. Mom, why didn't you tell me about Amy's injury immediately? On the other end of the phone, Judith answered coldly, You're overreacting. Don't make such a fuss. Amy just fell while playing in the yard this afternoon. Her wound is serious. Why didn't you take her to the hospital? Megan, you're always too overprotective. Making such a big deal out of this. Megan hung up and put Amy in her car. It's okay, we're going to the hospital. In the car, Amy fell silent and stared out the window. Megan tried to talk to her several times while checking on her in the rearview mirror, but Amy only gave brief responses. On the way to the hospital, Megan's heart was filled with fear and doubt. Was Amy's injury really just caused by falling from the jungle gym? And why were her mother and Carol so indifferent? Megan shifted her gaze from the steering wheel she was gripping tightly and looked at Amy in the rearview mirror. Amy was hugging her doll and trembling slightly. Megan was determined. She had to find out the truth. When their name was called at the reception, Megan stood up. Holding Amy's hand, she followed the nurse. The emergency room at Chicago Memorial Children's Hospital was relatively empty for a weekday evening. The walls were decorated with brightly colored pictures of animals, showing consideration for reassuring children. However, Amy's expression remained rigid, in stark contrast to the brightness around her. Hello, Ms. Williams. I'm Dr. Sarah Cohen, a middle-aged female doctor with a calm voice entered the examination room. After a brief nod to Megan, she immediately turned to Amy with a gentle smile. And you must be Amy. Nice to meet you. Dr. Sarah began with general questions. As she gently examined Amy's wound, she asked Megan when and how the injury had occurred. I wasn't there, Megan said, feeling guilty. My daughter says she fell from a jungle gym while playing at her grandmother's house. Dr. Sarah nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the wound. Amy, does it hurt only here? Did you hit any other part of your body? Amy glanced at her mother before shaking her head slightly. May I examine you a bit more? Dr. Sarah asked gently. Let's have your mom wait outside for a moment, and we can talk just us girls. Megan hesitated for a moment but decided to trust the doctor's professional judgment. It's okay, Amy. I'll be right outside. The 15 minutes waiting in the hallway felt like an eternity. Megan sat in a plastic chair, gripping her hands tightly. She couldn't get her mother and Carol's indifferent attitude out of her mind. Amy was certainly an active child, but their reaction in dismissing such an injury as nothing serious was abnormal. Finally, the examination room door opened, and Dr. Sarah came out. Can we talk? She led Megan to another small consultation room. Amy is with a nurse drawing pictures now, Dr. Sarah explained as she sat down. Don't worry, she'll be fine. The head wound needs stitches, but there are no signs of serious concussion. As Megan sighed with relief, Dr. Sarah continued, however, Ms. Williams, there are some concerns. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were serious. The shape and location of this wound are unlikely to have been caused by a simple fall. Megan felt a tightening in her chest. What do you mean? This wound is from a planar impact, shaped as if struck by something hard with corners. Also, I found several old scars on Amy's body, especially on her back and arms. Dr. Sarah continued, choosing her words carefully. In my professional opinion, this is not an accident. Those words sent a wave of terror through Megan. Someone. She couldn't complete the sentence. I asked Amy what happened, but she just repeated the jungle gym story. However, from her reactions and physical tension, I believe something else is happening. Megan held her head. Could it be someone in the family? Ms. Williams, I have specialized training in child abuse. Unfortunately, such cases are not uncommon. Children sometimes try to hide the actions of caregivers or family members, out of fear, or even out of love, Dr. Sarah explained quietly. I need to consider reporting this to Child Protective Services. Megan suddenly stood up. If my mother and sister are involved, I will never let Amy near that house again. Please stay calm, Dr. Sarah said gently. We can't make definitive statements yet. First, we need to talk with Amy. In a safe environment where she can tell the truth. When they returned to the examination room, Amy was drawing animal pictures with the nurse. When she saw her mother, she ran to her and hugged her tightly. Amy, can you tell Mom what really happened? Megan asked, looking into her daughter's eyes. What happened? Who hurt you? A look of fear appeared in Amy's eyes. She shook her head and buried her face in her mother's chest. I can't tell. She whispered softly. Why can't you tell, Amy? If I tell, worse things will happen, Amy's voice was trembling. Megan exchanged glances with the doctor. Dr. Sarah nodded slowly and took notes. Amy, no one can hurt you, Dr. Sarah said gently. Your mom is here, and we're here to protect you. Amy remained silent, clinging even more tightly to Megan. I'd like to keep Amy overnight for observation, Dr. Sarah told Megan. Tomorrow, a child psychology specialist counselor can talk with her. After the treatment and procedures were completed, and Amy had finally fallen asleep in the hospital bed, Megan spoke with Dr. Sarah in the hallway. What should I do? She asked in a tired voice. First, ensure Amy's safety, Dr. Sarah answered. Until she can talk about what happened, she should be kept away from people who might be hurting her. I will never take her to my mother and sister's house again, Megan said firmly. But without evidence, they'll just say I'm being paranoid. Especially my mother, who's a former lawyer with influence over people. Dr. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That's certainly a difficult situation. Without evidence, family situations can be particularly complicated. Megan suddenly had a determined expression. I'll close the flower shop for a few days. I'll ask my friend Kate to help with just the essential work. I'll focus on taking care of Amy and investigating what's happening. That's a good idea, Dr. Sarah said. I can provide a medical certificate if needed. And, she continued, choosing her words carefully, let's think about ways to gather evidence. Megan looked out the hospital window. The lights of nighttime Chicago were reflected in the glass. She returned to Amy's room and sat in the chair next to the small bed. I'll protect you, I promise, she whispered, holding her daughter's small hand. The next morning, Megan was talking with Dr. Sarah while drinking coffee in the hospital cafeteria. Having spent all night at Amy's bedside, the signs of fatigue were evident under Megan's eyes. I've been thinking a lot last night, Megan said, holding her coffee cup with both hands. Amy is hiding something. She's keeping quiet out of fear. Dr. Sarah nodded understandingly. That's not uncommon in child abuse cases. Especially when the perpetrator is a relative. That's the problem. I can't believe my mother or sister would do this directly. They're cold and critical, but... Megan said, choosing her words. But I'm concerned about my nephew Michael. He's a troubled child, and Amy is always afraid of him. Child-to-child violence shouldn't be overlooked either, Dr. Sarah said. Especially when the adults who should be supervising aren't responding appropriately. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Thomas Reed, who specialized in child psychology. After his interview with Amy, he approached Megan with a serious expression. Ms. Williams, Amy still isn't talking about the details, but through her drawings and play, I'm seeing some patterns, Dr. Reed explained. She's clearly experiencing aggressive behavior from an older boy. She's also expressing disappointment that adults who witnessed this didn't intervene properly. With an aching heart, Megan said, I need evidence. They'll just say I'm trying to keep Amy away from them. Dr. Sarah leaned forward with a serious expression. I have a suggestion. It's legally a gray area, but... She lowered her voice. Is there a way you could record something to gather evidence? Megan thought deeply. Amy has a favorite teddy bear. She takes it everywhere she goes. If you could hide a small camera in that teddy bear. Dr. Sarah started but stopped. However, this is not something I can formally suggest. Recording and surveillance laws vary by state, and recording without consent can be problematic. But my child's safety comes first, Megan was resolute. I have a friend who's good with technology. She might be able to help. That afternoon, Amy was cleared for discharge. Megan had her friend Terry modify the teddy bear, embedding a small camera and microphone. They gave Amy an age-appropriate explanation. Amy, this teddy bear is special, Megan said, looking into her daughter's eyes. He has magical powers to protect you. Even if something scary happens, the teddy bear will tell Mommy about it. Amy looked at the stuffed animal with a half-doubtful expression. The teddy bear is watching. Yes, the teddy bear is always watching over you, Megan explained gently. So take the teddy bear with you when you go to Grandma's house. But what if Michael takes the teddy away? Amy's voice trembled with fear. Megan's heart ached. Amy's words strongly suggested that Michael was the object of her fear. The teddy bear is yours. No one can take it away. If that happens, you can clearly say, give it back. That weekend, Megan called her mother. Mom, I want to talk about Amy. Oh, how's her wound? You always overreact, Judith's voice was cold. She's fine, Megan said, suppressing her anger. Actually, I'd like Amy to play with Michael tomorrow. I have an important business meeting. On the other end of the phone, Judith's tone changed. Well, that's wonderful. Michael will be happy. Carol will be home too, so there's no problem. Thank you. I'll bring her around 10 o'clock. Megan hung up feeling like her stomach was in knots. The next day, Megan dropped Amy off at her mother's house, promising, I'll pick you up at 2 o'clock. Amy tried to appear brave, but she was clearly nervous. She held her teddy bear firmly. Megan didn't actually go home but positioned herself at a nearby cafe, monitoring the footage from the teddy bear's camera in real time via an app Terry had set up. The first hour was peaceful. Amy was quietly coloring in the living room, and Judith occasionally came to check on her. However, the situation changed after lunch. The camera captured Michael luring Amy into the garden while Carol was busy on the phone. Hey, baby, Michael's voice contained mockery. Show me your new toy. Amy hugged the bear tightly and said, No. This is mine. At Grandma's house, we share everything, Michael approached Amy. I said lend it to me. When Amy silently shook her head, Michael suddenly pushed her down. The teddy bear rolled away, and the camera captured them from an angle. Michael grabbed Amy's arm and twisted it hard. It hurts. Stop it. Amy's cry made Megan tremble. She started to stand up, but Terry grabbed her arm. You're gathering evidence, right? Terry said quietly. She knows you're picking her up in 20 minutes. Megan sat back down in agony. On the screen, Carol had come out to the garden. What are you doing? Carol called to Michael. Amy won't lend me her toy, Michael said with dissatisfaction. Seeing Amy crying, Carol said, crying dramatically again. "That's Megan's child for you," and gently stroked Michael's hair. "But Michael, don't be too rough. Your aunt will complain again." She went back into the house without watching over them. The camera captured Michael threatening Amy. Megan couldn't watch anymore. She arrived at her mother's house 30 minutes earlier than planned. In the garden, Amy was sitting alone, holding her teddy bear. Michael was nowhere to be seen. "Amy, let's go home," Megan said quietly. After putting her daughter in the car, Megan turned to her mother and Carol. "That's enough. Amy won't be coming here anymore." Being dramatic again, Carol said, folding her arms. "Children always fight." "This isn't fighting, it's abuse," Megan said in a trembling voice. "And you adults turning a blind eye to it is the worst crime." Back home, Megan sent the recorded footage to Dr. Sarah and made a formal report to the police and Child Protective Services. The seasons changed, and the signs of autumn began to drift into the streets of Chicago. On the windowsill of Megan's flower shop, blooming dreams, orange marigolds and purple asters were lined up, announcing the changing season. At the back of the shop, Amy was eagerly coloring with a new coloring set. The wound on her forehead remained as a small line, but the shadow of fear in her eyes was gone. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she did feelings drawings with her counselor Martha, gradually healing the wounds in her heart. "What do you think of this?" Amy proudly held up her coloring. It was a picture of a smiling family holding hands under a blue sky. "It's beautiful," Megan smiled. "Shall we hang it on the wall in our new house?" 6 months after the intervention by the police and Child Protective Services, their lives had changed dramatically. After Megan submitted her evidence, the investigation progressed rapidly, and it was discovered that Michael had been inflicting similar violence on other children as well. He was now placed under supervision in a specialized family home, receiving treatment from a child psychiatrist 3 times a week. Judith and Carol were sentenced to community service for the crime of child neglect, having failed to respond appropriately despite their knowledge of child abuse. They were also required to participate in a therapy program for family relationship restoration. Megan's relationship with her mother Judith remained complicated, but surprisingly, there were signs of gradual repair. Judith acknowledged her coldness and controlling attitude for the first time and was trying to change through counseling. Last week, she delivered a small handmade quilt for Amy's birthday. It was a gesture indicating her desire to break the chain of strictness and emotional distance that she herself had inherited from her mother during childhood. Meanwhile, Carol still refused to admit her mistakes and insisted she would not forgive Megan for betraying the family. Because she failed to accept responsibility for Michael's problematic behavior and tried to dismiss everything as children's play, her visitation rights with her son were also restricted. Megan closed the shop and took Amy's hand. Today was the day they were moving into their new house. She had sold the small apartment and purchased a small house with a garden in the suburbs. Having become an advocate for the importance of child safety in the community through her family's sad events, Megan was increasingly giving talks at local parent groups. When she unlocked the door to their new house, Amy let out a cry of joy and ran inside. From her bedroom window, she could see a small backyard and an apple tree. "Mom, you know what?" Amy suddenly said with a serious expression. "I'm not scared anymore. The teddy bear taught me to be strong." Megan hugged her daughter, surprised by the strength she felt from the small body. They had suffered deep wounds, but they had overcome them and become stronger. The sunset streaming through the window bathed them in a golden light, seeming to promise a new beginning. "That's right, Amy," Megan gently kissed her daughter's hair. "We're both very strong girls.